Meeting order. Municipality of Oakland-Wawanesa would like to acknowledge and recognize that we are operating on Treaty 1 and Treaty 2 lands, being the original territory of the Anishinaabe and Dakota nations and the homeland of the Métis Nation. First item is adoption of the agenda. Be it resolved that the agenda for the August 20, 2024 meeting be accepted as presented. Somebody to move that, please. All seconder. Gregor, all in favor? Mr. Fisher, are you there?
Here,
Okay.
can you hear me?
Yep.
Hear you now. There is a vote for the agenda.
Yes. Agreed.
Thank you. Be it resolved that the special meeting of council be recessed to allow council to
You have enough quorum for a forum, you don't need his input.
Thank you. Mr. Fisher?
Agreed.
Okay, you. Okay, open to the floor. You as a member of the public, this is a public hearing in regard to that bylaw, local improvements. You're speaking about it now. You stand up, give your address and or land location and
Do a little bit of an introduction to it all first,
Okay.
just so people are aware. Okay, so welcome everyone to this evening's public hearing with respect to a borrowing bylaw for upgrades to the water treatment plant, replacement of water lines, and relining of some water lines. The proposed project is valued at $1.6 million, and all borrowing or debentures must be approved by the province through the municipal board. That can be a very lengthy process. And from what we have been told most recently is that some applications that were made to the municipal board last fall were not approved in time for their respective councils to have them included in their 2024 agendas. So the recommendation that we received from Municipal and Northern Relations was to start the process early, even if that meant starting with a worst case scenario, and then amending it as more information or grant monies became available. So some of the examples of what amendments might take place yet to a bylaw would include changes in the amount of borrowing. So if prepayments get made or if there are grants that we receive, as well as if the interest rate changes. Currently, financial institutes will only guarantee their rates for 90 days. The rate that we had been quoted was at 5-point-something%. And again, recommendation was take it up 2% higher just in case things changed between now and when a project got finalized. Anytime a council is undertaking a large project like this, they are attempting to balance having money paid in advance, so put into a reserve, which means then that people who are living in the municipality are paying on something now that the project may not in fact take place for another 10 or 15 years. The other way of doing it is through borrowing. And what that means is the people who are living in the community at the time that the borrowing takes place are the ones who are paying for the project and paying it forward over 15 or 20 years. This council has attempted to do a bit of both with the 2024 budget, including $60,000 to be put into a reserve. But obviously, at a $1.6 million project, it's going to take the borrowing as well. When council is considering doing a project like this, they also have to determine how it is that the levies are going to be put onto taxes. There are various options that can be done. It can be done strictly on the assessed value of your property. It can be done on a per parcel rate. It could be done by a frontage or flankage, or it could be any combination of the above. And council, as with the lagoon borrowing, They opted to do a combination of per parcel and on assessment. The per parcel part would allow property owners to prepay a specific amount. In this case, what council was considering was $2,000. And then that way that isn't applied to taxes. For property owners who don't want to prepay, the amount necessary to cover the $2,000 plus any applicable interest would in fact be applied to taxes. And if with council wanting to do part of it on assessment, that can't be prepaid because your assessment values can change year to year. The steps in this process, as I indicated, are quite lengthy. So starting off tonight, council will hear representation from the public at this public hearing. They will consider the borrowing bylaw for first reading. Anyone who has objection to the proposed levy will be given the opportunity to further object to the municipal board. Council then has to await the decision of the municipal board on whether or not it requires a public hearing or whether it will make a determination without having to have another public hearing. If the board approves the bylaw as it goes forward at this time, letters will be sent out to all ratepayers, letting them know of their opportunity to do a prepayment. And once that prepayment period ends, the bylaw would have to be amended and then it would have to go back to the municipal. At the time that we're at that step, it is also hoped, we're aware that there are grants coming available, funding grants this fall through the Water Services Board. And they expect to be making their decisions on who is awarded grants probably in January or February. So with corresponding this to the same time, we would also be able to make any amendments if we had received grant funding that would lower the amount of the borrowing by. And with that, as indicated, council will take any questions that you have or any representations. Note that I have 2 letters of objection that have been provided.
Come on, people, get up and speak, or do I gotta do it for you?
I'm waiting to see if anybody else has something to say.
No. Okay, this is basically, I'm wasting my breath. This is debt by taxes. Essentially, this is what I consider to be a forever tax, which means it can be renewed at any time and infinity and beyond. Reference to Lagoon, that's exactly what you did. It was a 10-year deal and you extended it, Dave. So that's on you. Prepayment means you never ever have to pay that tax again, correct? Even though it gets extended. Am I wrong in that aspect? Pardon me?
That portion.
That portion, okay, well, Joni, back me up on this. It was a 10-year deal, and then you extended to somewhere in 30, 33 or 34, I believe you mentioned something like that. So that was like you renewed my lease with consulting with me on that.
Sure what he's referring to.
I'm saying that the bloody tax on the lagoon got extended, it got reset to 0.
Mr. Parsons, I think you and I have agreed to disagree on this. The amending bylaw reduced the number of years from 20 years down to
It was
15
10.
years.
That was the something earlier this year, Dave, regarding this. But never mind, one of our facts are confused. By the way, you all seem really nervous, like you guys. Come on, reach down. Some up and got there. Okay, like that one earlier thing you said, Johnny. You're going to tax me right now for some future plan that is actually not going to be in fruition in that time frame, correct?
No, that's not what you said.
Yes, she did. She just said that. It's something that might change like 10 years from now, but you're going to start taxing me now.
No, it's something that we can put something in reserve and start taxing you now, put it in reserve so we can have the money at one point, 10 years or 15 years down the road, or we can borrow it. One of the,
Well, then borrow it.
that's what we're talking about tonight.
Live within your means. I live on a very limited budget and my pay ain't going up. However, anything I do off my own budget. If you can't make things work around here, restructure your spending. That's just be a thought. Anyone else want to chirp up here, for Christ's sake, or what?
I have, what type of improvements are being done? What's the plan?
So the basically what we're looking at, there's some improvements at as far as the water treatment plant goes, but there's going to be relining of the water lines on Water Street and Park Street. And new lines put in on commercial for that one block. That's correct.
And could I just get name and address for the minutes, if you don't mind?
Yes.
Sorry, David Peter.
And your address, Mr. Peters.
12 Provincial Road, I think it is. Yeah, but I see that it's talks a little bit, but I was just kind of curious more in depth of what they're going to be doing. Wells in the park to supply power. Where do these numbers come from? What's kind of the plan?
So when we do these things, we have to go to water services. Water services does an engineering project at the park. What has to be, it's involved, what approximate cost is. And so they supply us with all that information.
Is there going to be any changes to the quality of the water? I just had the water test done not long ago. Some issues that I have. Is there any plans for that?
That would take a total upgrade of the water treatment plant, which is in the cards right now.
Okay,
But that would be involved in that. So
so this is just changing lines.
this is just lines and are relining them and replacing lines.
Okay.
Okay, and a generator.
What ppm is that?
What's that?
Get over 1200 ppm. I know this shit.
Hi, Nika Castro with 101 Fifth Street. I'm just wondering, how is it determined which streets are getting improvements? And, in the coming years, are there going to be more streets that are going to be added to the list?
Well, I think that's the object of it. We have an obligation that's the provincial government, federal government putting on us for asset management. Asset management is basically trying to develop some sort of material that's going to say this needs to be done now, this can wait for so long, and so on and so forth. We're in the process of that. What happens with Water Street and Park Street is that they can be relined, which is substantially different costs than putting new lines in. That is the direction of the drilling, et cetera, that they don't have to dig up the roads or the yards. So that allowed us for this plus their whole lines. Commercial Street has been dug up so many times for water repairs because of the underground springs there. And that has caused major for us with the amount of money we're spending just to do repairs. We're better off to just go ahead and do that. That's kind of getting too crucial.
So down the road, how many other streets are we looking at? Another 2 million, like?
Could very well be. It's something that nothing's been done as far as these water lines for the last 50 years, basically, other than dig them up and repair. So there's nothing been done as far as new lines go, with the exception of the new development. So it's like what's happening in Brandon, or you look at what's happened in Calgary recently, and now what's happening. Oh, you wait till something drastic happens, then you're forced to do something. We're trying to get away from that and trying to put it so we do it more of a schedule, so we can channel it to the right way.
Okay, and then on the flyer that was sent out on the back, it said something about, annual transmission and distribution costs are expected to decrease.
Right.
How does that work?
That works. What happens is if we're continuing to have water main breaks, we are continuing to treat water and pay for the chemicals and pay for distribution, only to have it in the ground. So if we can start doing repairs so that we aren't losing the treated water, there is an expectation that some of the other costs would come down.
So no estimate on how much to save?
Not an estimate on how much it would be, because quite truthfully, as a lot of the lines break, we don't become aware of it until water actually bubbles up to the surface, which with the soil type that we've got here, a break can go on for quite some time before it becomes noticed. So there is a lot that gets lost in that regard.
Okay, thank you.
Commercial Street, they cannot reline it either. It's got to be replaced.
Because of the size, can't be real.
Pardon me, what was that?
Commercial Street water line, we're supposed to reline. At this time, Park Street and Water Street can be, which is significantly cheaper than placing the whole line, but commercial is cannot be.
Because of the sun.
So what's the state of the water on Fifth Street? We had a fellow neighbor down. I thought you said Fifth Street, didn't you? Okay.
First house, second corner.
And you're asking which? That's what your question?
How's our water lines doing?
Well, that's a good question. As we see water line breaks, which I think on Fifth Street, they're down the alley.
Pardon
So
me?
water lines are in the alley here. Laneway.
Dave, you gotta speak louder.
Mr. Parsons, the water lines on Fifth Street are in the alley.
I know, there's a sinkhole right back of my barn.
That's what we're looking at when we're doing that. That will become substantially easier to correct because of the fact that it's in an alley rather than under asphalt. So, I mean, that
Cool,
could
and
happen,
I'm up first.
that could happen in the future. Yes.
So just one more quick question.
Later, guys.
Is it the
I'm
main
tired of
one?
this. Bye.
Is it also the line flowing into the individual homes?
No, this be strictly the municipal.
Okay.
Brent Mooney, 408 Fourth Street. I completely understand why we have to do this and we need to do it progress and it seems like it held a lot of cost, but anyway, we gotta do it. That part I understand. Couple problems I have is the method, these levies again. Their levies constantly, they're really making the taxes disproportionately a lot for vacant properties. And, you know, we can raise it somehow. But again, that was my concern and I brought that forward before. The other question I had, is there any way we could not raise a lot of this by raising rates? Our water's so free, so cheap here, it's almost free. And that would,
That's good to hear.
and that would, well, I mean, I got, you know, my wife's siblings and that in Belmont and stuff, and I know what they pay, and it's 2.5 times. So, and I don't believe they have the quality, but anyway, and that kind of makes it more user paid. Sewer and water, people that use the sewer and water could be paying most of it. User paid, just like the rink or the dump or anything. And could we not raise a lot of this money through raising the rates?
We can do that, but we have to go through, Public Utilities Board. Anytime we want to increase water or utility rates, have to go through that program. We just recently went through that because you have to show a deficit for so long before you can apply for an increase in rates. So we went through that process last year. Yeah.
2 years ago.
2 years ago?
Started it, yeah.
Yeah, so this year, rates were increased substantially on the water and somewhat on the sewer, not as much. So we keep looking at that, and as long as we don't hit a deficit, we can't go to pub and say, we want to increase rates. We can't just go and say, we want to jack them up such and such.
You have to have a reason.
We have to have a reason, and they have to
That's a pretty
approve it,
good reason.
and they approve it. So they only let you go as much as what you need to do. For instance, if you want to put money into reserve, which we're doing now, $60,000 a year. We said to pub, this is what we want to get accomplished. We have to raise rates. We understand that. We want to increase, we can put away $60,000 a year for all repairs, whether it be the water treatment plant or line or whatever the case may be. This is where we got to with pub. Pub gave us that gave us the money that we could do that, gave us an increase in rates. But you can't jack them up sky high. I'm not sure what pub would say to that. I'm not sure that they would approve it. As it goes on a percentage probably of increase that they're gonna allow. But
What they allowed, they counted for some capital projects, I believe, right?
But not to the tune of 1.6 million.
so it's limited as to what pub will allow us to do. But I do agree that that's there, but what makes it tough when we do the split here with, as far as per parcel and on the assessment situation? Some people want it on assessment only. Other people want it on a per parcel basis, because then it's on a per parcel, you're looking at your neighbor pays as much as you do. But that neighbor could have one child, or there may be just one retired person, and the next one down the road has 5 children, and so on and so forth. There's never a perfect way for this. So we have to try to come up with something that works for everybody. And ultimately, when it comes to vacant lots, we think that that's sooner or later gonna have a building. So we don't want to let them off completely. We want them to, we need the tax increase or the tax flow from having property dealt with and houses built.
The Exactly. I mean, there's hopefully gonna be houses on them someday. I mean, I don't know. There's not a lot, there's been a lot of building in, well, at least in the last couple of years, things have been pretty quiet. But I mean, still the cost, like I said, it's, this particular one will deal with, not all the rest of the levies say, but just speaking of this one, the cost is for sewer and water.
Right.
So, you know, so as far as doing this project, because it's for sewer and water, should, you know, place it, vacant lot to use sewer and water, pay the same towards as say, a business or a hotel or a restaurant or.
Yeah, and I think that's what we come up with, but at the same time, I think that the council's position on it is that we want houses built, so if we put it at zero, there's no incentive to sell the land either, so
No, no.
let's leave it at that. So, you know, it's a tough one to.
Like I said, it's disproportionately raising. When I did the subdivision down there, which. I think there's only one member of the council still here, then I was told that it would be, I said, it's gonna cost me a lot of taxes. Oh, maybe marginally go up. Well, it's gone up 700%. And that part that kind of hurts a little bit with this one is that April, the sewer and water we put in when that happened. I paid $10,000 a lot. Nope, nobody else paid it or no levies or anything like, you know. So I mean,
The service of
those
those
are in there. Now getting levies put on for replacing other parts, which, like I said, I don't have a problem with my house or my rental house or anything at all. They use it. It's gonna be what it's gonna be, but these levies on these empty lots are just getting, there's been enough of them that it's getting, the taxes are out of hand.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Out of control with them, really, it seems, but anyway,
It's, and noted, like, that'll go to the board, municipal board, they'll have a look at it as far as your submission goes, and they'll have to make a ruling on it too. Maybe they'll say it's unfair. We'll have to see.
I mean, I know we gotta get the money from somewhere. We gotta do these things. We can't just lay down and die as a town. I understand that, of course, so. But anyway.
Sorry.
Are we allowed to hear the letters that were submitted?
Pardon me?
Are we allowed to hear the two letters that were submitted?
I don't have a problem sharing
Just
it.
did hear one of them.
Okay.
The other is Mr. Dave Mooney, who submitted information stating that he's got one particular parcel of land that he believes is landlocked and wouldn't be able to have water and sewer provided to it. Like it to be exempt. He has concerns with respect to where that property lies with respect to its proximity to the landfill or the waste transfer station, and whether or not you would ever be able to build a dwelling or any kind of development on it. And objection with respect to the tax increase, given the current assessment on his property, a proposed tax over the next 20 years is more than double what the assessed value is on the property by the time it's extended out to 20 years. So in other words, he would like to ask that the tax increase, I would be asked to pay a tax increase of over double what my property is assessed to be worth. I hereby request that the lot be exempted from this bylaw based on those facts.
Yes, I'm Dave Mooney. And I have two lots. And the one lot is roll 22,400, 7.7 acres. And the assessed value from the office a couple of days ago, I believe, was $2,340. It's my understanding that my initial tax would be exactly the same as the Wawanesa Mutual, providing it was under one roll. Now, you can imagine what your assessment on the Wawanesa Mutual building and lot would be. I'm sure it's not $2,340. As a few years ago, the road allowance on the south side was closed by the council. There's no public access to this property. There's no way you could put it in without, there's no other way to put it in except across private property. The registrar will not allow me to sell that property by itself because they cannot provide title to it or are not allowed to So I can't even sell it. A point of reference, I believe if you go by the satellite imagery, it will show you the percentage of that property that is still within, even though it's called, the new word is, believe it is waste below the ground, it is still the dump. It is still a landfill. And under that, it says that no houses or habitable structures will be within 1,320 to 1,500 feet of the, now I believe that the north end of that, there might be about 12% of that, which is outside of that. The rest of the property is all non-developable. So I have two problems. I'm being taxed a double, more than double what my property is assessed to be worth. And I can't put it in there and I can't sell it. So I asked the question, why should I pay for services that I can never, at this point in time, utilize? I have one other lot there, which is 600 by 220 feet, which would accommodate probably 8 to 10 lots. There's one lot across the street in the new subdivision, which has been on the market for 5 to 6 years at a reasonable price and has never sold. So that tells you what your market for new lots in Wawanesa is. It's very, very low. I believe there's been one permit for a new house in the last 4 years. So the prospect of selling lots is not great. If I don't move forward on that as a 9 or 8 or 10 unit lot, taxes are totally prohibitive from ever recouping money. So that backs me into the corner of seeking a buyer who would put multiple use housing in there, which could be anything. There's millions of people that can't afford a house. That's going to be the next push, I think, is for low rental and accommodating people who cannot afford houses. And that's the direction I'm being pushed towards right now. If I want to sell a property, I'm 86 years old, not much sense in me hanging on to it very much longer. So that's why I asked for that lot to be exempt. I never touched the other lot. As far as I'll pay, I have no problem in paying my fair share on that one, but the one is totally out to lunch. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, can we clarify that? You said the mutual would pay the same, and that's not correct. So,
Okay, on the initial, do they not pay per roll?
so this is done in two different chunks. So part of it is per parcel.
Yeah.
And part of it is raised on mills.
That's the part I was referring to, the per parcel.
Yeah, but I just wanted to make sure that you knew that the mutual would pay very different amount of what it is.
Okay.
Property.
Well, maybe my reference was not correct, and if it is, I apologize. But at a lot that's assessed valued at $2,300, and I'm expected to pay over the next 20 years $4,000 increase for a service that I cannot use at this present time. It's not legally possible for me to access or use water services or in that land anyway. So that's why I asked for it to be exempt. The other parcel I'll pay.
The first parcel is going to be set at.
It was a set rate of $2,000 is what council had instructed.
Sorry, can we also go back to Brent and Joni? Can you, if I'm wrong here, but Brent's suggestion of raising it with the water rates. I don't think it's possible with a debenture.
That is correct. So when it comes to water rates, which is the user paying, that is for the actual consumption of the water and the costs associated with distributing it to the house. That doesn't include the infrastructure, which when you're talking about a big lot, it is still going to cost the infrastructure to run the lines down in front of a vacant lot, the same as it would cost to run the infrastructure in front of anybody's parcel of land or any business. And that is where council's discussion had been with respect to creating an equal per parcel lot and not differentiating between whether it is a developed lot or not, because the infrastructure cost is going to be there regardless.
Yeah, so when we get approval of the new water rates, they do include some amount for projects, but it's not enough to tackle something like this. So to tackle something like this, we have to do a debenture, and our hands are tied to doing it on what Joni said at the start, per parcel, frontage, no rate. Average. The ones that she listed off, I'm not sure if I got them all there.
Yeah, but I mean, yes. Those guys must have made a good enough case, because some of the other towns are, like I said, our water is really cheap, and as a way to raise revenue, it would be a fair way. I understand you gotta go to you get as much as you can every time, and that's it.
Yeah. It's a tough goal. Like, as I said, we have to show a deficit for 2 years before we can even go to pub within our utility.
So when we owe money, we borrow this money, and then we owe money, is that showing a deficit? Does that help?
There'll be a deficit for sure. Yeah, but it does not a water usage. We have to show that deficit. That's very on the utility itself.
What's the timeline?
For this?
Yeah.
We look at next year. Live, as long as we get, it depends if this gets approved by the board. September, the debenture goes through and all that, a lot of ifs there, but and this is worst case scenario. What we have here is the worst case scenario. We could be a lot better off if there's grants given by the provincial or federal government for infrastructure, which is coming more and more these days. Now, of course, we have to get approved for it, we have to apply for it, approved for it. So this is worst case. In all probability, it could be a lot better.
Where did we get the quotes from to understand what the costs were gonna be, and did they?
The Water Services Board provides us all that information. We have to go through that.
So they would have understanding of this area, and
Yeah.
we would have to travel half hour from Brandon or
Right.
wherever to do this.
And they put a lot of contingencies in here all the time. They don't want to be caught short, so it comes in, we have to put more in later because it's what it's gonna be.
I don't want to get caught short either.
No, that's right. And we don't want to either. I mean, it never looks good to have to go back to you and say, hey, we didn't charge enough with our debenture, and we have to come back to you. We don't want to do that either. Yes,
When you crunch the numbers, you've got the prepayment and then you've got the mill rate portion. Roughly how much of it is each? Half and half? Or
I would have to, hold on.
she will have it in her computer.
I will, but I think you've also got it here. If I could look, you will know how many per parcel.
$50,000 house would pay.
Well, I want to know what the average, whether.
Yeah, prepay would be 632,000. When you paid prepaid, and it's the total price is 1.6. 1.6 total cost,
Okay, so.
and prepay would be 632,000.
Mill rate increase and.
So the bill rate increase would be about around cover $1 million. Yeah.
I'll just add, when we're doing the lagoon, like Dave said, you have to go with the highest price when you start this. And for one example, on our lagoon quote, when we did our special levy, we didn't have to put a liner in the lagoon, so we saved $1 million on that alone on the lagoon project. So then you had to borrow less money, right? So that's just one example of how it's been cheap.
Where does this work with prepayment? If you do a prepayment and you lock into $500,000.
The prepayment won't be there until all the numbers are finalized. All that prepayment is, set, so if that comes down to say $1 million and you put the 2,000, of course, that changes in the,
Okay, so the prepayment might change as well.
could change as well, yeah, depending on what kind of money we get in, funding wise.
But if you, let's say you do the $2,000 prepayment. it doesn't benefit you in terms of you're gonna pay less on the mill rate or anything. What I'm coming at is if a portion of the people do a prepayment and you've got more money up front.
Right.
Does that mean the mill rate's gonna go down for everybody?
Well, then more prepaid and that, then we don't have to borrow as much.
Yeah, but then it's the people that are prepaying are then someone who doesn't prepay also has the benefit of someone prepaying.
That's right.
Well, no, someone that doesn't pay is still gonna pay it over the.
They're still gonna be on the mill rate.
Yeah, but the mill rate might be less, so they are benefiting from someone else's prepayment.
We tried to calculate it here using the 2,000 and then what would happen after that as far as mill rate. But of course, all those numbers could change, we get the funding from things, grants, et cetera. So,
If I could jump in there as well. So the anticipation being that as if everybody prepaid, you would have $600,000. You still have to raise that 600,000. So anybody who's prepaying pays the 3,000 that then isn't on their taxes over the next 20 years. Where the difference comes in then is anybody who didn't prepay, that per parcel amount is still on their taxes plus interest. They end up actually paying closer to $4,000 by the time the 20 years is up. So it depends whether or not, there's a lot of things.
Yeah.
Do you think you're going to be around for X number of years that prepaying it is going to make it worthwhile? Versus, no, I intend to sell next year, so I don't care if it's on somebody else's taxes.
Yeah.
Those are all considerations somebody would have to make.
anything further?
And I expect a response of some kind from the council on my request.
We're doing first reading on it, the basis of what's there. Yeah, that's first formality, not a case where we're throwing it through. At that point, it goes to the board.
Yeah, what will happen is I will make anybody who has raised formal objection, make you aware of your right to formally object to the municipal board. And the municipal board will then make the decision as to whether or not they're prepared for it to proceed as is, or whether they're going to ask the municipality to make amendments on it. So I will send you out documentation on that following this public hearing.
By making representation to the municipal board, would it be in Winnipeg?
You would send it in writing to start with. Typically, if they decide that they are going to hold a public hearing, they will hold it out in the community itself.
I know it's not a huge amount of money. It's just that I don't feel it's fair at all when I'm asked to pay for something that I can never receive any benefit from.
Yeah, that is noted.
Okay. Everything? Okay, whereas all representatives in regard to the 2024 financial plan review have been dealt with, therefore be resolved, public hearing be concluded and council resume its normal. With that, Bill, seconder, McGregor, on favor?
In favor?
Sorry. Forgot about it. Wait, like. Bylaw number 42-2024, being a local improvement bylaw for the water treatment plant replacement / relining of certain water lines in Wawanesa. Be it resolved that bylaw number 42-2024, being a local improvement plan bylaw for the water treatment plant and replacement / relining of certain water lines in Wawanesa be read a first time. Please move that. McDonald, second, Councilor attached. There is no discussion on first reading. All in favor?
In favor?
Thank you. Okay,
Adjournment.
okay, be it resolved that the meeting is now adjourned. Will you please do that, Councilor Jones, seconder, McGregor, all in favor?
In favor?
Thank you.